What's up, everybody? I'm on hotel Wi-Fi, as you can tell. So let me know in the chat if it's glitchy and slow, and I'll do this another time. But I wanted to go over a couple stories that I've been paying attention to, um, and mainly I kind of feel this. Maybe it's because the powers that be. I've said this before. Dollar's a confidence game, right? Economy's a confidence game to some degree. And if the powers that be come out and say, "Hey, guess what? It's real bad out there, and prepare for the coming storm," I don't think it's a kind of a self fulfilling prophecy. But even the mainstream media, all nighter hider, am I coming through loud and clear? I'm on this hotel Wi-Fi. I want to make sure that I'm not buffering on your end. Let me know. But mainly, I think the economy is really bad. You see all these signs. I'm going to go over a story like McDonald's is laying off its workers. McDonald's, and these are big companies. Amazon's laying off a bunch of workers. So, the mainstream media is saying one thing. Obviously, the administration's saying one thing. Janet Yellen, economy's strong. But I recently watched The Big Short. I'm sure you guys have all seen that. And it's fascinating how people didn't see it coming. And maybe they didn't see it coming because they were making so much money and things were going good for so long and they didn't want to highlight the problem. And I think something similar is going on here. Let's see. Let me know if you guys can hear me okay because I'm on this crappy Wi Fi. All right. So I wanted to go over a couple stories. First, this video. This is a Chinese reporter at a UN meeting asking a UN representative what he thinks about the U.S. and Syria, since the UN is calling out Russia. So this can kind of put in perspective. Obviously, it's state-sanctioned media in China. So let's listen to what he has to say.
The U.S. military in Syria is illegal or not?
Uh, that's not an issue that we're dealing with at this stage. There's been a war.
But is that
there's
because it sounds very familiar. This week we talk a lot about the UN Charter, the international law, and relative resolutions. But it sounds to me a foreign presence, foreign military based presence in another country without invitation sounds like something else to me.
I'll leave your analysis to you. There's at this stage.
What's the difference between Syria, the situation in Syria, and the situation in Ukraine?
There's no U.S. armed forces inside of Syria, and so I don't have a. It's not a parallel situation.
You're
to some of
sure
the
there's no U.S. military personnel?
I believe there's military activity.
Yeah,
but in terms of ground presence in Syria, I'm not aware of that.
Okay, 5 U.S. service members were injured in that attack. If there were no U.S. soldier service members in Syria, how could they got injured? That's weird, right? Should I ask you about that?
Yeah, everything's playtime. It's just, and I want to show you this article kind of from my perspective. So it says China. I don't know why Zero Hedge picked up on the fact that I guess I want to buy a scooter. But look at all these scooters. Anyways, it says China outpacing U.S. military at disturbing rate, says General Milley. China is on a trajectory to achieve military superiority over the United States by mid-century. Okay, so what comes first in your opinion, the chicken or the egg? And in this scenario, I'm wondering in the capacity of economic prowess or military prowess. So do you get economic prowess without military prowess? Because there's a lot of countries with not a very big military that have significant economic prowess. And in my opinion, part of the reason that the United States military is so big is because of our free market, is because of our economic prowess. And we're doing literally anything and everything to destroy that. If you have a free market, where people can keep their profits, where people can have private property, and you have a communist government, which one outcompetes? The free market. That's why China has to steal intellectual property. There's not a lot of inventing going on there. And the reason being is if you contradict the CCP, you might disappear. So when it comes to free thinking outside the box, it's a little bit harder in a communist regime. If you've ever seen Chernobyl, the USSR, there was a lot of things going on with that nuclear reactor that were wrong, but the state said they weren't. And so nobody wanted to speak up. And I think the same thing goes with the free market. But the United States is doing everything in our power to make the free market within the United States, to make investment within the United States not desirable. Like people are literally leaving states like California because it's so oppressive when it comes to taxation. It's so onerous and oppressive when it comes to regulation. Like when you want to start a business, just the headache to get to the front door, to get the keys to the business is such a pain in the butt. And then you got regulators up your butt all the time. Why would you want to go through all that trouble? And you know who loves regulation? Big business, because it prevents competition. And so you got this corporate partnership with Washington that is really killing innovation in this country. And innovation, to a certain degree, economically, empowers the military. And so when General Milley says China's going to outcompete us in the military by mid-century, I ask why. Are they innovating more than us? Is their population growing more than ours? Because they have population free fall as well. Are they having more investment going to China? Why are all these things happening? And I would submit to you guys that it has a lot to do with economics and money fleeing the United States. So I want to take a look at, see if you guys have any questions. Then I have one or two more stories to go over. Just double checking you guys can hear me okay. All Nighter Hider, what up, what up? Lucy Bean, what up? Hey all, OPEC cutting millions of barrels a day. Good time. So Zero Hedge put out a tweet today that was referencing a tweet like a couple months ago. And it was, who's going to cut first, OPEC or the Fed? Because if OPEC cuts production, let's think this through. Well, is demand going down? No. What does that create? Oh, inflation. So you guys saw the deal that was brokered by China between Saudi Arabia and Iran, longtime enemies, and now they brokered a deal through China. This is, I don't think this is like an overnight death of the dollar. I just think we continually shoot ourselves in the foot. We want to attract capital in the United States. And when we make it insanely difficult and we virtue signal and say, hey, OPEC, we want to shut down. I know you're an oil-rich nation and you get your money entirely from oil sales pretty much, but we want to shut it down here in the States. But we want you to be reliant on us and BFS with us. Does that make any sense? Like, think about self-preservation of that country. Who are they going to become friends with? It's really not cosmic. Blows my mind. Oh, let's not forget, we have the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, bone dry. Bone dry. 5 by 5. What's that mean? Let's see. Margin Call is a good movie too. Yeah, and there's another one on HBO, Too Big to Fail. That's pretty good. But it just goes to show you, like, if somebody watches that or you walk through that movie with them, and you're like, so here's what's going on. What's the difference between the residential housing market, the CMBSs that were bet on through CDOs, synthetic CDOs? It was just bet on top of bet, right? And I don't think that kind of betting is going on in the commercial market, but the commercial market is cratering. I saw an article today about New York real estate, which is like creme de la creme of commercial real estate is New York. And they, from this article on Zero Hedge, was at an all-time low. What? And that happened really fast. People are starting to work from home. People are getting fired. And all that stuff can have deleterious effects on a bank, especially if they took bets. What's the over-under on the government stepping in to help these banks? Well, they already did with SVB. So, Lucy Bain, you should watch Peter Schiff's speech to the Mortgage Lenders Association in 2007. I have seen that one. It's been a while. Big fan of Peter Schiff. He gets it. He's not a fan of Bitcoin. Maybe some of you guys aren't either. But pretty much everything else, I agree with him on. He understands free markets. Some of my favorite Peter Schiff content was him going down to Occupy Wall Street, which, by the way, had unified, like the issue itself kind of unified the right and the left. They were not okay with taxpayers bailing out banks, both the right and the left. Now, the left was blaming capitalism and Wall Street, and the right was blaming the government. But uniquely, the government didn't want those groups to unify and point the finger at the government for causing this mess, right? Because they're the ones that incentivize those those mortgages with low credit scores and all that stuff. It's the same thing with college loans. It's a joke. Yeah, Margin Call is a great movie. Agreed. They sound like Keebler elves. Don't know who you're talking about. Yeah, communists starve unless they can steal. And we're communism light. I said this the other day. We live in this land in between, right? We're like, regulation, we need more of it. And regulation is what's causing a lot of these problems because banks have to hold a certain amount of treasuries. They have interest rate risk with the treasuries. But what it does is give consumers a false sense of security. You guys probably know this very well. When you talk to your friends about the stuff we talk about on this channel, they're like, what the hell? Chicken Little, slow down. What are you talking about? I don't see any of this stuff going on. People are starting to wake up because we have inflation, but what the regulators do and the government always putting a Band-Aid, hitting the easy button, has caused people to fall asleep at the wheel. Your average consumer, they don't shop around for banks, right? And Peter Schiff was saying this on his channel the other day. It's like, if there was less regulation, people would look at banks like they look at any other business. Like, hey, what is their reputation? Have they cheated their depositors before? And if you're new on the block, you're the new guy, and you don't really have much of a reputation, you have to incentivize depositors by paying them a high interest rate. So that's what the free market would do. And if your reputation sucks, no one would deposit with you. So that is your currency as a bank, is keep that reputation. But now it incentivizes, I've said this many times before, it turns you into a sucker. If you're an honest actor, if you're the person that's like, I don't want a PPP loan, I don't want the government to bail me out, yada, 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 and your competitor does it, you might be dead in the water because you can't outcompete a money printer. It's impossible. So if they're able to lower their prices because they have the backup of the federal government, think airline industry, you're SOL if you want to operate a business on the up and up. Oh, and by the way, the government also doesn't want full deposit-backed banks. There's been quite a few that have tried to start. So they would charge a fee to deposit into their bank. If you wanted to lend your money out, they would give you some of that interest, and it's 100% backed bank. So when you take money out, it was actually there in the safe. It was actually deposited. Now, why would the government not want that? Because where would the money go? To those 100% backed banks. It's ridiculous. Free markets align with the laws of nature. Couldn't agree more. Because people, I always tell people, capitalism isn't a thing. It's not like an idea. It's how people interact, or war, right? If you have people on an island or whatnot, but they trade freely if you want peace, and that's capitalism. And then somehow there has to be a third party who has to inject themselves into that. That is government. I'm turning into that old crusty uncle who sits in a rocking chair and curses at the government. You're in Arkansas now. All nighter hider. I thought you were, for some reason, I thought you were up in Alaska or something. Do you like doing fishing? Fishing up there? Looks like a Holiday Inn. I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. No, it's a Hilton. Yeah, very fancy. Very fancy. I'm up in the Portland area, and they've cleaned it up quite a bit. I stopped by. There's 2 Walmarts up here that have closed down because they can't make a profit because they're getting stolen from too much, which I think is going to continue, by the way. Is businesses not just shutting down because no one wants to buy their stuff. It's because people are stealing it, which is unbelievable. Yeah, West Coast, you nailed it. Confused philosopher. Watching political elites in America today gives me a sense of what it was like among the aristocracy in France right before the revolution. Yeah, I saw somebody put up a sign. Have you guys been following what's going on in France? People are pissed off because they raised the retirement age, but they burned down they burned down 2 tax collecting, basically IRS buildings over there. Trash collectors aren't collecting trash. It's a whole mess. I don't know if they know what the problem is, because if the Cobra commander in France, what's his name, whatever his name is, if he came out and was like, I'm sorry, okay, sorry, I won't raise it to 64, it's 62 now. Does that fix anything? No, it doesn't fix anything. So I don't know what they would do. Like if they'd stop rioting, if he raised it to, but they're pissed because they pay a lot of taxes and they have less and less to show for it because the government, somehow these politicians keep getting richer and richer on like under $200,000 a year salary. How do they do it? Yeah, that's where the money goes. But yeah, no one saw it coming in France back then. And I saw that sign in France that was like, the aristocracy didn't see it coming. And I hope there's a populist movement of self-reliance. That's what I'm hoping. What I'm fearful of is as countries move further left or right, they typically snap back the opposite direction really hard, which is not good. It's just authoritarianism in another direction. But I hope that this wakes people up. The more they rely on government, the worse it gets. We shall see. Because I was talking to somebody the other day. It's like I'm sick of trying to tell people. And somebody mentioned this in the comments. Like, I'm sick of trying to talk to people about this stuff. But here's the thing: if they're not going to wake up now, maybe some more pain will wake them up. But they need somebody to tell them the truth. So when you come to that, what they're going to do is listen to the mainstream media. Mainstream media is going to say, you know what it is? We don't have enough regulation, and it's this damn capitalism that's ruining everybody's life. And obviously, if they believe that, that means more of the stuff that broke the system in the first place, more government control. So we need to be able to be those people that gives them answers logically and say, okay, so here's how the problem started. Here's how we're going to solve it. And you vote for more of that stuff, you're going to get more of what we have today, inflation. Off-topic question, are you planning on going to Rebel Capitalist Live? I am not. I need to go to one of those, but I travel enough for work as it is. I do need to go. George Gammon's one of my favorites. His Q&A tonight, I recommend you guys check that out. Somebody asked a question about dollar dominance, and that he kind of encapsulates way better than I can why I don't think the dollar's going to die overnight. He did a good job answering that question tonight. So if you guys think dollar's going to die, hyperinflation in the United States overnight, I think it's coming. I think that's the trajectory we're on. And I think lower standard of living is going to be standard in the United States. It's not going to be back to good old days anytime soon. And we are on the path of the death of the dollar, but I don't think it's happening overnight. Really glad I made it. Me too. Thanks for coming over. Let's see. My Brent position is way up thanks to OPEC. Here's hoping it goes higher. I want to see $150 a barrel. Yeah, anything is rare. Especially like the green weenies are like making it easy for realists. It's like, okay, so you're going to shut down oil production in your country and just be over reliant on OPEC countries and call that green energy. Wonder what that'll do to the price. Go up. Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, I think, somebody, All Nighter Hider says, I think New York commercial real estate is down 40%, but I don't know the numbers for sure. Let's take a look here. Let me see if I can pull this up here. Yes. So Manhattan office vacancy hits record low at Marquee LA office tower, sells for 50% loss. So this guy kind of sums it up. Problem with commercial real estate goes like this: occupancy falls. Last 2 years it's fallen. It's staying that way. Therefore, square foot of rental prices falls, rent roll falls, then the building value falls. Reserves for the bank are consumed. Lender seeks more equity to restore 50% loan to value. Equity does the numbers, walks away, and then the bank's in trouble. So that's a lot of commercial real estate buildings. So we'll see how it shakes out. But not only are they dealing with a slowdown in demand from just people aren't buying stuff, therefore people have to shutter their doors. They had the pandemic, and people changed the way they worked pretty much overnight. So I am the 1%, Peter Schiff. Those Occupy Wall Street kids didn't know what to say. Oh, yeah, the video. Yeah, that's a good video if you guys haven't checked it out. He goes into Occupy Wall Street, says he's the 1%, because they're like, you need to tell the 1% did this to us and all this kind of stuff. And to be honest, those kids are like, I like that line of thinking. Like, it's easy to be like, okay, those kids are dumb. And we were all probably there at some point being dumb kids. Because to be honest, like, socialism kind of pulls at your heartstrings. And there's a quote out there. It's like, if you're not a socialist when you're young, you have no heart. And if you're not a capitalist as you get older, you have no brain. Because you realize the reality of the world and that incentives matter, right? You can have a socialist commune in your family, and that tends to work, like the Amish, pretty socialist. But it's the magic bean theory. Like somehow if you're in government and you have the power to allocate resources, you won't be greedy. and yeah, it's funny because it's very wrong. Revolution sounds very interesting to me. People are becoming more red or blue, which I don't like. I don't like the whole like, you know what's going to fix this problem? Voting for, and it's bad right now, don't get me wrong. But the problem to me is government is in way too many things, takes way too much money from its citizens. We don't have a free market. And if they don't fix that, the system won't be fixed. So a different team involved. And so a lot of people are like moving to blue states or red states based off of how they vote. And even in like this area, I don't know if you guys have seen like East Oregon is trying to secede. and join Idaho, I'm all about it. States' rights and competition is the experiment, right? So if California wants to be dumb, people can leave. Here's the problem. There's big brother government who prints money and gives it to California. So the experiment doesn't really work because that money given to California, it diffuses purchasing power all around the states. It's kind of annoying. I'm constantly surprised to hear it's from Erg, to hear even financial YouTubers say that they are banking with Wells Fargo because their reputation has been terrible for years. People were asleep at the wheel. Yeah, I had a rude awakening in my first mortgage. I went to a local bank, got a mortgage. This is when I lived in Mississippi. And like 3 months later, my mortgage, I did nothing. And my mortgage was with Wells Fargo. I was like, what? How does this work? And then I realized how the mortgage business works. You got mortgage brokers, you got these small little mom and pop banks, and they just sell it to the big ones. Therefore, I am a client of Wells Fargo. And that was before they were making all those accounts for their clients, unbeknownst to their clients. Yeah. Question from Lucy Bean. How high are you expecting inflation to get this year now that the Fed has pivoted? I think it'll be a yo-yo going up the stairs. What I mean by that, it could go down in a way that we don't like, meaning demand has cratered. And so, could get back to 2%. I don't think that's a possibility. And if we do get back to 2%, that's because demand has cratered. We've got bigger problems, right? That the economy is like shuddering and slowing down. And liquidity and lending is shrinking big time in the States, which is what the Fed wants. I think over this decade, this is why I think it's yo-yo up the stairs. I think we're going to see anywhere from 4 to 20% inflation. And this is based off 1970s numbers. So if you follow shadow stats, because they're constantly changing the way they evaluate inflation, and whatever the measure is, keep it constant. Quit changing it. Why they change it, we all know. So if you look at shadow stats, and they do inflation numbers, they calculate inflation numbers today like they did in the 1970s, I think you're going to see anywhere from 4 to 20% inflation, up and down, up and down, up and down. And there is a certain, what's the word? Curveball that no one can predict. That's what's between people's ears. Because to a certain extent, it's math, that's human behavior, right? So that's why the hard part to predict is when people wake up to the idea that inflation is deliberate and permanent, right? Because I bet a lot of the people you talk to think this is temporary. It's going away, and we're going back to Disney World. And we're not, because the math, we're at the end of the road with the math. So it takes, and the other human behavior you can't really understand or know for sure is what Congress is going to do, because people on the right are saying we are not raising the debt limit without these concessions. Are they going to, the bluff going to get called? How's that going to work? So what would that do to inflation? And the other thing is, what if they start handing out UBI, inflation through the roof? So all those things are unknowns. What is a known is 32 trillion in debt. And that debt goes all throughout the economy. So that's just government debt. So what's the business debt? What's all this debt? And productivity is going down, not up, right? There's no new innovations. There's no new nuclear energy or something like that that just makes productivity go through the roof. All that tells me higher inflation for longer. And we need it. Like the government. When I say we, I mean the government needs it. Yeah, hit the like. Thanks for saying that, All-Nighter Hider. I fish in Alaska in June. Okay. I was asking him if he's a fisherman. In July, and I live in San Diego, and I'm here in Arkansas for paid vacation, framing a house. my good buddy. Right on. Yeah, Arkansas is a good place. I was in East Arkansas essentially. I lived in Memphis. I technically lived in Mississippi, but I was in Memphis for a while, so drove through Arkansas quite a bit. I'm also afraid of the backlash. I was saying earlier, backlash politically. Like typically, when you move super far left, you have people that go, I'm not really political, but I don't like people twerking in front of children. So whatever stops that, I'll vote for that. Don't care if they're authoritarian. So typically, there's this sweep back the other direction, more authoritarianism, and I don't know. It's a complicated. I don't know. There's not a lot the left and right agrees on today. I want to have hope that you can like have a logical conversation with somebody and be like, see, it's kind of not smart to do that. And people are so entrenched in their ideology, it's hard to do that. Yeah, I'm sick of politics all the time too, everywhere. I remember when I was younger, I remember when George Bush and what's his name? Al Gore were running for president, and we didn't know who was going to be president for like a couple weeks or something like that because they didn't know. Like they had to recount in Florida. All came down to Florida. No one cared. I think this was the 2000s. I was a kid back then, but I just remember no one cared. And I distinctly remember people like, you don't have to care about politics because who the president is doesn't really. You need to do what you need to do. Who the president is isn't going to affect your life. And that has been less and less true, right? That who the president is doesn't affect your life because there's just this whipsaw back and forth with political ideology. All night I keep trying to reach people with financial logic. Only press on those that are responsive. Yeah, I was thinking about a good way. I think a good question to ask is why we pay taxes if we can print money. Because if you ask that question and, there's going to be a pause, right? And they're like, well, that would cause inflation. I'm like, okay, so we do print money and you do pay taxes. So what amount of printing money is good? And then they'll be like, I don't know. I was like, well, we have $32 trillion in debt. And you can kind of put that in perspective. Then that gets them thinking. And you're like, so that's why we have the problems we have today because of math. And I like to think of money as like a productivity token. Like you spend your time, energy, and effort going to work in exchange for pieces of paper. And there's somebody somewhere that's devaluing those pieces of paper. So you're trading your time for something that can be devalued. Probably not smart. Yeah, I hear you, Lucy Bean. It's hard to reach some people, but I'll tell you, as the pain continues, there's going to be people who tune in. At the time, probably, 2008 or 2007, these are smart people, people in the finance space didn't want to pay attention to guys like Michael Burry. Then all of a sudden, they wanted to. And to be honest, you can't really convince somebody of something that they're paid to ignore, meaning politicians. So I don't think we're going to see anything from them or the mainstream media. Yes, I agree with you, All-Night Hider. The euro dollar market and the demand for dollars and the debt in dollars, that can't just die overnight, or the banks will die if they don't pay. Once you get over 150 people, communism and altruism no longer work because nobody cares that much about randos. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Like one of the things I teach in the military is the course I teach is SEER, but I teach people how to resist if they were rolled up by bad guys. Foreign country. Like so, if they're interrogated and all that kind of stuff. But the one thing I always harp on is what they are capable of, and that they're not that altruistic. Most people think of themselves as altruistic, including myself, where I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of a nice guy. I hand the old lady some money if she's begging on the side of the street. I wave people in if they want to merge. Like, I'm super nice. But if there's two people starving on one piece of bread, how nice are you? When you don't have food, water, shelter, clothing, medical attention, how nice are you? And then, speaking to what you said, you get 150 people that don't know each other, or more than that, and those people don't know each other. They start to take advantage of each other, right? And so you realize human incentives matter a lot, and understanding your capacity for that kind of stuff, and that you aren't so altruistic, which is one of my problems with the left today, or the woke movement. Everything's oppressive except for their behavior, right? That's a great quote. Socialism does work in small batches, but not at scale. Correct. Lots of serious military YouTubers I watch. Not retired Delta Force guys telling stories, but military analysts type people. Do you listen to the guy? Gosh, Colonel Douglas McGregor. He's good. They all put civil war down as a possibility, isn't even as a probability. What about you? So, probability, I doubt it. The signpost for me: breakdown in laws. So they start political oppression. Sound familiar? They start politically oppressing their opponent. People start migrating to their team geographically and politically and entrenching themselves. Things get more violent in the streets. People don't do anything if it's their team that's doing it. Then I can see civil war happening. I think definitely closer than we were 2 years ago. People who call for it, I prefer the system to work itself out, aka states' rights. But you don't like it, go to that state, yada yada. And to be honest with you, I don't think a lot of liberals want what they say they want, because we've been able to extend and pretend this semi-socialist America. But socialism doesn't work, as we all know. And so all the incentives are off and all this kind of stuff. So you have California not going into default because they're able to extend and pretend, because the federal government helps them out. Biden administration is helping out pension funds, all this kind of stuff. So they delay the pain. But to answer your question, I don't think it's probable. It's not desirable. But I like to think of it like the alphabet. A leads to B, B leads to C. And if you keep going, it eventually leads to Z, which is civil war. So at what point should you stop poking the bear as politicians? At what lines in the sand should you stop crossing? And there's certain lines that once you cross them, ain't going back. And we're getting obviously closer, halfway through the alphabet right now. And I don't think it would be pretty. God, I hope not, Lucy. No winners were there, in my opinion. Well, no one should be winners. Yeah, Civil War. United States has been through some dark times. I would prefer a peaceful, amicable split before Civil War. Whether it would be peaceful and amicable is the question. Ever seen Dr. Chris Martin? Oh, huge fan of him. Story of Rats in the Cage? Yes. That's Civil War. Huge fan of him. His way of explaining things. Actually, can't remember what his series is. But anyways, I watch him a lot. And he has great examples on exponential growth and like how humans can't understand that. And the example he gives is, and this would be like compounding interest, or like banks failing. Like we think it would happen in a linear fashion. But the example he gives for exponential growth is a like a dime's worth of water doubling in a baseball arena every minute or so. I can't remember. Maybe it was every second. But he said even if you're sitting in the upper rafters, you wouldn't realize that you're about to drown till minute 48, and you drown in minute 49. So that's why people all of a sudden get surprised that this is happening, because it happens so fast. Exponential growth, things are doubling and doubling and doubling. And he just has a way of walking through things logically. He talks about energy and all that I really appreciate. Big fan of his. I can't see it really unless Texas and Florida say they are out and the federal government says no. Yeah, I agree. But I definitely see lots of violence ahead in the streets coming. Hot summer. I avoid crowded places, like big time. Like people are on edge right now, especially with my family. Like I am not going downtown to the city. I'm not going to huge festivals. I'm not like not having a life, but like I'll go camping with my family. I'll go on vacation, but I don't want thousands of people around because people are on edge, and I think that's going to continue. From Confused Philosopher, I saw a documentary about how the Shah of Iran threw an extravagant party to impress foreign dignitaries while half the Iranians lived in dire poverty. A year later, the regime was overthrown. Yeah, you can push people so far, but if they have nothing to lose, that ain't good. As I've said, bread and circuses work if you have them. And if you're out of them, got no more bread, no more circuses, no more entertainment, no more fun sports ball for people to watch, no more distractions. People fill their time with, oh, and by the way, that's why I think 2020 happened, like the summer of 2020. Now I have distractions. People cooped up in their house. Not good. One of the many reasons, obviously. We the people are the government. We have the responsibility of stopping sick fooks from twerking in front of kids. That I agree with. But that's what I'm saying. There's some people that are apolitical that are like, all right, I'm cool with you're an adult, do what you want to some degree, right? But then you involve children. It's a line in the sand. So then some authoritarian comes in and says, I will cut all rights. I will suspend the court system and throw these people in prison. And we're like, yay, yay. But that can escalate fairly quickly. That's what I'm getting at. But yeah, I agree with your sentiment there. Yeah, the CIA and the Shah completely underestimate the entire situation. Yeah. Great book. It's fiction, but based on the events is Whirlwind by James Clavell. Heard of him before. Yeah, I've heard of him. Off topic movie recommendation, The Devil's Double, about Saddam's son. Oh, yeah. I've seen that. He was insane. He was absolutely insane. That's what happens when you have unchecked power. And he didn't even have much responsibility. He was just the guy who was like the redheaded stepchild, but super rich. Let's see. See if there's any more questions. Oh yes, you got it, Erg. It's The Crash Course by Chris Martenson. So if you want to get anybody started on like, okay, what are the levels to this? Why does it matter? And he uses plain normie people language like I speak, because I don't really speak finance. That's Chris Martenson's Crash Course. It's pretty awesome. And it's the magic water droplet in the stadium. Yes. There you go. Seems like we all watch the same people. I love it. And the reason, if you guys didn't know, like they do, I try to turn people onto them. And the reason I wanted to start my channels, number one, I wanted to get it off my chest, like some of these ideas. And talking to my wife, after a while, she's like, please shut up. And the other thing is, I'm in the military. In the military, I think that this is the biggest, I'm 100% certain on this, existential threat facing the military. It's national debt. It's huge. Don't see anybody talking about it. I did a video months ago about the chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff saying, this was in 2013, he said this. He said, our biggest threat, don't quote me on 2013, but it was a while ago. Our biggest threat is our national debt. And that's when it was $13 trillion. So I kind of forgot his warning there. You know what might be fun for one of these AMAs? We look at something like The Course of Empires, a painting series by Thomas Cole, and discuss. Ooh, that would be a great idea. The other, yeah, I like that idea. I want to start making it more interactive, things that we can actually discuss, like walking through something together would be kind of cool. Reading this Storm Before Storms about the fall of the Roman Empire, great read. I read When Money Dies. I don't know if you guys have ever read that. It's interesting. Human psychology is very fascinating to me. Like the ability, one of the lines in The Big Short is that one of the kids that was trying to short these CDOs said people don't want to think about the bad things. So that's why it's so easy to short, because nobody wants to think about the what ifs, the bad stuff coming. So, your neighbors, your family that you talk to about this, you're like, hey, just so you know, financial system's going to collapse. They're like, even if it was true, I don't want to talk. It's yucky. It's yucky talk. I want to be happy. It's on my list of books to read. From Lucy, what is the possibility that Chinese have so embedded themselves into government that it's they who are pushing the woke BS, destroy, sorry, it was moving on me, destroy the enemy from within by poisoning the wells? The Art of War, yes, Sun Tzu. That's what I would do. And it does seem like China's playing chess and we're playing checkers. Got very unrealistic people in charge in the United States. Very wishful thinking people, so it appears. You have realists in China, and they're authoritarian, so they can pivot a lot more. I think it's odd. Like, this is a question I ask people who don't really think about this stuff at all. Why do we have like things that, because you hear Washington talk about China like they're Germany in the 1930s, right? Okay, fair enough. Why are we manufacturing nearly all of our medication over there? Good question. Why do we have a lot of raw materials that the military is reliant on manufactured in China? Good question. Why isn't that changing? Also good question. So, methinks the United States wants a war with China more than China wants war with the United States. My opinion only. But if I was China, I would do that exact thing. So division within the country. We do it too, right? It's not really cosmic stuff. But if you open the door to it and play to it as a political leader, and you're like, you know what would get me elected or reelected? Division, not unification. So I'm going to divide. Even though that's a political expedient thing and has nothing to do with the betterment of the country, it helps me out in my career. Sounds like every politician today. When Money Dies is great. Another great book. Yeah, totally good. Totally great. Is there any financial intel on Canada? Yeah, I just read that because their mortgages are, I believe, 5 years. So they have to refinance every 5 years. I think their mortgages are 30 years still, but they have to refinance every 5 years. And forced selling happens a lot in Canada because if you have to refinance at 5 years, you can't afford it because the prices went up and the interest rates doubled, you're SOL. And so the forced selling in Toronto is up 300%. That's a lot. I follow a guy. I had him on my channel, Market Mania. He does great stuff on Canadian Intel. Let's see. Our entire economy is running through 5 monster banks and a liquidity crisis at the same crisis in any of them could bring down the whole house of cards pretty fast. Yeah, correct me if I was wrong about confused philosopher. Correct me if I'm wrong about your mortgages, but that's the way I understand them. So like 20 or 30 years, but you have to refinance every 5. And if you can't afford that refinance rate because the interest rate went up and the price went up, what do? My understanding is they're forced to sell. Yeah, like Mark Moss says, people run to pleasure and away from pain. But that's why you have that cycle of like good men, good times, weak men. I guess that's the way history goes. But you never feel like you're living in history, right? Like in the 90s and early 2000s, I was pretty young, but I was kind of like beat bopping along. Life was pretty like easy, right? And in the last 5 years or so, life in the United States feels like you're living through history, and you it feels, which isn't like the best feeling, right? You're like, take the easy times again, but such a time as this, that's why we live here, and we get to make a difference um, in history. So that's kind of cool. But people run away from run towards pleasure until that's not an option anymore. It's kind of like the analogy, like there's always that third like at a certain point, peace isn't an option. So if you are the peacemaker and you're like peace, but the other person gets a vote, right? So if their vote is to push you, you have to give space, right? If they push you, you got to give space. Eventually, if you get to a line in the sand where you're like, I don't want to cross that, and they still want to push, there's no peace as an option anymore, right? So that kind of is kind of like pleasure, right? Pleasure is running out. Free, cheap, easy, cheap money, ignoring the problems. It's running out for politicians, running out for demand in the United States. You guys know as well as I do how people live in the States. It's just credit card to credit card. It is unbelievable how people live paycheck to paycheck. Did a story a while ago about most people who make over $100,000 paycheck to paycheck. It's unbelievable. Zero financial education, and they're incentivized to do it. The balls are the only worthy politicians. Yeah, I got involved in the Paul movement, the libertarian movement, a while back. They make a lot of sense. Yeah, and he is anti-state. I do like the Pauls. I've thought about running for office, to be honest. Like when I get out of the military, I'm just like, I don't want to, but I'm like, well, somebody's got to do it. And if that person's going to be somebody, maybe it should be me. But it just seems like such a disgusting business. Yeah. Luke at Market Mania Canada. Yeah, he's a good dude. He is. That sounds about right. Oh, about the housing. Yeah, cool. It's 100% correct intel on Canada. Any suburban survival tips, food, energy, etc.? Good question. If you can avoid it, dense urban areas, avoid them because people are unpredictable. And like we were talking about earlier with socialism, like in the cities where nobody knows anybody, you don't even know your neighbor. So if you're talking urban, like suburbia, like where I live, some kind of water filtration system, and I'll have to think about the brand. I can't think about it right now. Ninja talks about it a lot. But there are these water percolators, so you can basically take pond water, filter it. I always go through the list of what kills you first. Medical, if you don't have emergency medical supplies, and what would kill you that you can actually fix is a bleed of some kind. So a tourniquet, I always tell people, because if you have, and maybe some antibiotics, but some over-the-counter medications, stuff like that. But if you have like a sucking chest wound, or you're missing an eyeball, or you need stitches and all that kind of stuff, and it's going to take a while. If you don't have a lot of medical expertise, probably not going to be able to fix that. You can triage it, you won't be able to fix it. But things that'll kill you and you can save your own life is bleeding. And then if you're not hurt, then I talk about what's going to kill you. Food and dying of starvation, it's not an immediate need. Water is, because you start losing your faculties real fast as you get dehydrated. So some kind of water filtration system, and then in a pinch, be able to boil it. And then I always say food stores, and then have some kind of plan B. This is helpful, not just if the world goes to hell in a handbasket, but what happens if there's like a natural disaster? Do you have a plan with your family? Like, let's say the cell phone towers go down. Do you have a meetup spot? Yes or no? Just kind of mentally rehearse how that would happen. And ideally, keep your cars full of fuel too. Lucy Bean. Canada's about to experience hard times. I don't expect the Federation to survive. That's kind of been my base case is in the States, like you're going to see other G7 countries fail economically before you're going to see the States and the dollar fail for a lot of reasons. One of them being they have debt in our currency. And Canada, believe it or not, is dumber, unfortunately, like economically. Like even the guy, what is his name? Who's the Totalian leader up there? I'm forgetting his name. Anyways, it's like the budget will balance itself. And I mean, it's very frustrating that people vote for it and they're going to get what they wanted good and hard. Raise meat, rabbits. Yes, that I agree with. I just asked my HOA the other day. I was like, hey, can I have chickens? And they're Gestapo in my HOA. I decided to buy a house in a neighborhood with an HOA. Don't do that. But chickens and your own meat source and water source is a great idea. All right, let's see. My business just got an offer for a $15K grant to start using CBDC. Holy cow. Yeah, the thing about the CBDC that doesn't make sense to me is how it solves inflation. Because it doesn't solve. You have to have like a free market brings in more taxes. That's the reality. And politicians kind of know that, like the Laffer curve, the more you tax people, the less actual tax income you get in. There's a certain point where it's like, quit raising taxes because you're actually getting less. So the CBDC doesn't, if they actually use it for what people say they're going to use it for, which is power and control and trying to micromanage the economy, you're going to get in less in taxes. So it doesn't fix the scenario. So if they come in with the CBDC, it has to be benign because your average normie is going to be like, okay, I don't care. CBDC, I don't care. So if it's overnight power and control, that's not good. And it doesn't solve inflation. Like that's the true, like I'm trying to figure out how it solves inflation. Because if you're doing a 1-for-1 swap, dollar for CBDC, it's the same issue with liquidity. Obviously, they have more control, but it doesn't solve inflation. It doesn't solve debt. So, and obviously it's horrifically dystopian because it has the ability to be controlled. If it has the ability to be controlled, it's kind of like the Second Amendment. It's like, hey, you get on a gun, it has to be stored in a government vault. I promise we'll give you access to it whenever you want. So you're like, seems sus. I don't know if I trust you. That's kind of how CBDC works. Yeah, that is very interesting, Lucy. Lucy Bain. I just made tilapia pond before my paid vacation. Got to plant a garden. What do they call those? Like self-reciprocating pond. Can't remember what those are called. But yeah, you can grow your own tilapia essentially. Yeah, tilapia is a smart idea. Canadian government is pushing it out right now to get businesses on board. Jeez. I love my quackaponics system. Hose full of poo water to fertilize the garden with. Worked awesome. Good luck with your system. Okay. Trudeau, that's who the Canadian totalitarian is. He just seems so gross, doesn't he? Just like so disingenuous. I posted a video like a couple of months ago. He's talking to Zelensky and he's like talking in Ukrainian accent. He's like, Vladimir. It's like, who talks like this? Like, he just seems so phony. Trudeau is proof that God rarely gives both hands. That's a good one. Yeah. Lucy, are you up in Canada? Because that's interesting. Like, you didn't see any trucker protests in America. So that was like, it gave me like at least some confidence that there's some people in Canada that are like, F this noise. But are the majority of Canadians kind of like go along to get along? And then what's the line with Canadians? Like, are they like, well, if you go this far, like if you invade my privacy, that's too much. Because it does seem like they're, at least the news shows, they're willing to accept more totalitarianism. Hey, but America can't really talk. Any contract can be rescinded, even an HOA. Maybe I need to look into that. Because I want some chickens. I don't like the suburban lifestyle, but like my, like I kind of live in one of those neighborhoods. It's like you don't have a huge yard and all that kind of stuff. But like my commute is pretty important to me that it's not hours. But as soon as I retire, which is coming up sooner rather than later, I'm out of the suburbs. Ooh, great question, Johnny. What would it take you to move out of the United States? Not much, to be honest. I love the United States. I love what the United States stands for. But let me put it this way: if I've been looking to move out of the United States after I retired from the military for money, like quality of life. Your dollar goes 3 times, 4 times as far in South America. And to be honest with you, they said this on the floor of the House. They were interviewing the head of Homeland Security, and he was talking about crime and murders per 100,000. And Baltimore has higher murders per 100,000 than Honduras. Like all the high crime South American countries that people are like, oh God, I can't visit there. We have higher crime here in the States. And so what would it take? I would do it potentially tomorrow. Big thing to me is family, like, being close to family. But if it's a plane ride away, regardless, I wouldn't mind living in South America because my money goes farther. Now, if we're talking government overreach, it would be Second or First Amendment open violations, which is pretty close to it with the First Amendment. And we're definitely right in line with the second. But if they start making home ownership virtually impossible, private property virtually impossible, we don't want to violate the Constitution. We just will make it so onerous to do so. We'll make it illegal to exit the dollar, make it illegal to own gold, silver, Bitcoin. Those are things where I'm like, all right, time to pack up, because it's only downhill from there. Because there is no resistance at that point. That's a great question. Like I said, I've thought about it before. And what's odd is a lot of people, there's a lot more American transplants. There's a YouTube channel called Nomad Capitalist. Talks about all this, like what the tax laws are in certain places and all that kind of stuff. Grass is not always greener somewhere else, but if your dollars go farther, that's one huge benefit, obviously. I'm more inclined to move to a red state like Wyoming. like if I'm in the States. Wyoming, I've been looking at. I think they have the smallest population, and got mountains for skiing and all that kind of stuff. Let's see. NDP political party suggests exactly what you said. Store your guns at the police station. They'd come get them if there's like emergencies. And that just, it's so funny. It's funny because it's sad, but yeah, I always tell people, okay, yeah, guns are, in case of the bad guy and stuff, but I don't store them at the police station or in the government because that's what they protect me against as well. I always remind people in the military what they swore an oath to. Constitution. You don't swear an oath to the president. You swear an oath to the Constitution. It's becoming more important. Okay. Let's see. Confused philosopher. Canadians are really nice until they're not. What's the line though? Like when do they go, okay, you've gone too far? Like I'd love to know what the boots on the ground opinion was of the trucker protest, whether people liked it or not. But the government's response to the truckers' protest, was it, okay, the government is really overstepped here. People that live in Toronto and Vancouver are California and New York. The rest of Canada is MAGA. Oh, good to know. Isn't it weird how cities make you kind of like socialist wacko? Because you kind of have to, like, cities are more communal, which is why a lot of people on the right like don't like fight back or don't organize because they're individualistic. So it's like the left's like communal and like, hey, we need to get together and get this Antifa rally going, and the right's like, just leave me alone. I'm gonna be over here on my land. It's hard to get the right organized for anything. Everyone I know is armed to the teeth and ready. Oh, nice. Guns are dangerous, especially if you leave them on the table. They might shoot somebody. The channel Privacy Fight is good about describing HOA content. Okay, good. Good to know. Damn right, Lucy. A new pew pew. I got a new pew pew recently. Yeah. Yeah. For what is it? 7 on. Some might say Australia. Jury's still out. But 0 for 7 on anybody who's done gun buybacks, made them illegal, all turned into totalitarian governments. Government's the people. So if they can own guns, yeah. If you move to South America, where have you considered Paraguay? I haven't considered Paraguay. I've looked into Costa Rica. I've looked into Colombia. And I've looked into El Salvador. El Salvador because Bitcoin's legal tender. My wife gets a vote, and her vote counts as 2. So if she's like, we ain't doing that, then I'll be staying in the States, but at least for a while. But it's not something I'm like super like I want to do that right now. But if it got real bad, I would think about that. I'd prefer to stay in the States just because being close to family and it's what I'm used to. But I will probably visit for a while out there before I retire, if I ever consider seriously. I've considered Uruguay, Johnny. What have you heard about Paraguay? Yeah, I haven't heard bad things about Paraguay. If you have to sell everything, I'm taking the family to South. If I have to sell everything, I'm taking the family to South America. No Spanish required. Needed for Paraguay. Very loose gun laws. Ooh, good to know. Looks up any amount of abuse until they're. Oh, okay. I got you. Good point. All right, guys. I've been going for an hour and 10 minutes. Thanks for all your questions and comments. It's all useful information. I like the idea of getting like a topic or maybe going through something as a group. That'd be kind of fun. Bounce ideas back and forth. Let me know if you guys think there's a specific topic or like a series that would be beneficial to go through as a group. But I'm headed back to Denver tomorrow, so I'll be recording back in the studio for the next video. But thanks for tuning in tonight, y'all. Always good to chat with all you guys, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.